Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil kareem, amma ba'd. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, welcome back to another edition of our Wednesday Q&A. As always, if you have any questions, please send me an email, mufti@islamstl.org, and we will inshallah do our best to try and answer your questions on Wednesdays. So we have a few questions today that we will go over. Most of them are pretty short and straightforward, inshallah. First question that we have: how many kafadas or expiations for multiple broken fasts in different Ramadans, how many kafadas would be required? Now, first of all, what is kafada or what is expiation? So if a person intentionally break fast in the month of Ramadan, so one of the fara'id fasts, if one intentionally breaks their fast in Ramadan by either eating, drinking, or having intimate relation with the spouse, one of these things, then qada of that fast will be necessary. The fast would obviously be broken. Qada will be necessary of that one fast, plus kafara or expiation will be necessary for that. Kafara for a broken fast, intentionally, as I said, is to fast 60 consecutive days, 60 consecutive days. And if the fast is interrupted without any legitimate Shari'i reason, then one has to recommence the 60 days and start over again. So we can see how severe the penalty is for that. So it's not if one broke a fast forgetfully or unintentionally, but if they did intentionally and if they broke it by either eating or drinking or having intimate relations. So they knew that what they were doing and so on and so forth. And this is the penalty for that. Now, in the inquired scenario, if multiple fasts in different Ramadans were broken in this particular way, and kafara had not been done for any of the previous intentional broken fasts, then one kafara will suffice and be sufficient for any of the fasts that were broken intentionally previously. So one kafara plus the qadas of whichever fasts were broken in that. So 60 plus however number of days is required in addition to the kafara. Now, if the kafara, if there was an intentional broken fast before, and you had done in another year breaks another fast intentionally, the kafara that was done previously for another one, that will not suffice. They will have to do yet another kafara for that particular intentional broken fast. So we can see the rules when it comes to this scenario. So we should always safeguard our fast and make sure that we are doing it properly. And if one intentionally again breaks it in this way, then we can see what the severe penalty is for that. Okay, the next question, I think we have answered this previously, but it was asked again, so I will just answer it quickly again. Is there zakah on a rental property? A property that one is renting out to another person? So the answer is there is no zakah on the value of the property itself that's being rented, because it's still owned by the person, even though they're renting it out. However, the rental income will be added to the wealth of the person, and that will be calculated in the zakah amount. Okay, if someone makes two mistakes in salah, they miss two wajibs in salah, will one sajdat al-sahu suffice for both? So of course we know a sajdat al-sahu, or the prostration of forgetfulness, which is done in the qaida akhira, it becomes necessary when a person unintentionally misses a wajib action of the salah. And if one misses multiple wajib acts in salah, then yes, one sajdat al-sahu will be sufficient in order to be a replacement for that mistake that was particularly made. So yes, it will suffice. And you don't have to do multiple sajdat al-sahus, but the one sajdat al-sahu will suffice for multiple mistakes that were made. Okay, can nikah or marriage be done without a wali? Is a wali required? Now the wali, most of the time for the bride, is her father. If her father is not there, then someone like the grandfather. If he's not there, then her brother or her uncle, something like that. But in particular case, from the Ahnaf standpoint, now there are some madhahib that do require the consent of the wali in order for that to happen. Now, in the case where she does not even have any of these particular male relatives, then even someone like an imam of the community can serve as the wali of that particular sister. But in principle, an adult girl, according to the Hanafi madhab, she has an independent right to get married according to her wish, and she does not require the consent of her wali. As long as the nikah was conducted in the presence of two male witnesses, or one male and two female witnesses with the ijab and the qabul, then the nikah will be valid. However, still, even according to the Ahnaf, it's not advisable to do this. Why? Because there could be issues that arise, family issues, family problems, this and that. You always want everyone to be happy. You want to announce the nikah. You don't want to keep it away from everyone. You want to make sure that the family is happy and everyone is pleased, and you get the du'as of everyone so that there will be barakah and blessings within that. Okay, what is the ruling for the aqiqah as to three different things that they're asking? Number one, when does the aqiqah need to be done by? Secondly, what are the distributions of the meat, of the portions of the meat? And thirdly, can you keep some for yourself? So first of all, aqiqah itself is mustahab. It is highly preferable to do this. In fact, it's some mention it's from the Sunan as well, because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself ordered that when, for example, his grandchildren Hassan and Hussein were born, then in that case they slaughtered two animals for them at that particular time. But it refers to the sacrificial slaughter, which is done preferably on the 7th day after the birth of a child. And as the fuqahas, the scholars say, 2 animals, 2 sheep or goat for the males and 1 for the females. So the day the child was born, so whatever day it was born, then 7th day after that, inshallah, that will be the time of the aqiqah, where the animals are slaughtered. The intention is made for that. And the ulama say if the aqiqah cannot be made on the 7th day, then even if you make it in alternates of 7, so if you can't do it on the 7th day, then do it on the 14th day, or on the 21st day, or on the, and so on and so forth, just like that. Regards to the meat, one may do whatever they will with the meat. There is nothing which is prescribed particularly from the sunnah, but ulama do say it's preferable that you divide it into 3 particular portions. 1 portion you keep for yourself, 1 for feeding relatives and friends or people that you know, and thirdly, a portion to give to the needy, a sadaqah, just like kind of how you do with your with the other meat as well, the qurbani meat and so on and so forth. Okay, the next question was a follow-up to last week's Jummah khutbah. So a person says, Jazakallahu khairan for your khutbah last week. As a follow-up, if someone gives salam to me, we talked about the aspect of the greeting and giving salam and whatnot. So as a follow-up, if someone gives salam to me or greets me while the adhan is being called, or while I am engaged in tilawatul Quran or dhikr or anything like that, is it wajib or compulsory for me to reply to that person? So this is a very good question, because we know from the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, haqqul muslimi ala al-muslim khams, that there's 5 rights upon a believer upon another, and one of them is radd salam, yani returning the salam when a person gives the greeting. But the ulama do say that if there's also adab and etiquette to this, there are times where it's very difficult to fulfill this aspect and it can be delayed. For example, if a person is busy replying to the adhan, then if the adhan is going on, a person is repeating after the adhan and doing that, then it is not desirable at that time to convey salam to a person at the time. One should wait till after the adhan is done and then give salam after that. If a person is engaged in ibadah, for example, they're making dhikr, they're engaged in dua, they're reading the Quran, they're making tasbihat, whatever it may be, then in that case, it's not compulsory upon such people engaged in ibadat to reply to that salam. If they want, they can reply at a later time, if they had heard it. If they had not heard it, then it's not even necessary for them to reply. You have to understand, the person particularly asked about replying to the adhan. That's also a form of dhikr. So a person will not be obliged to respond at that time, and they can choose to respond after the adhan is over because of the busyness that they have in responding to that at that time. So there is etiquette and adab when it comes to giving the salam to another person. I had mentioned the hadith last week that a person who's riding should greet the one who is standing, and the person who's standing should greet the one who is sitting. The smaller group should greet the larger group, and so on and so forth. These are all mentioned from the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, the next question is, person says, if you have a particular procedure like a colonoscopy performed, then it's necessary to make a ghusl after that in order to perform the salah, or just the wudu, or is it just the wudu that breaks? So a colonoscopy procedure obviously would, inserting in that particular cavity in the backside, that is something which invalidates the wudu. So wudu would have to be performed once again, but the ghusl would not have to be performed. So as long as wudu was made, then in that case, the salah will be valid. Okay, is there a narration which mentions about taking breaths when one is drinking? Like when one is drinking water, instead of gulping it, to drink and then take a breath, and then drink and take a breath, and so on. So yes, there is a hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Abu Dawood, narrated by Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, كَانَ إِذَا شَرِبَ تَنَفَّسَ ثَلَاثًا وَقَالَ هُوَ أَحْنَأُ وَأَمْرَأُ وَأَبْرَأُ. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that, Anas radiallahu ta'ala said that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he drank, he would breathe 3 times in the course of a drink. So he would take sip, and then he would breathe, and then he would sip, and then he would breathe, and then he would sip, and then he would breathe. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would say after that it is more wholesome, it is more thirst quenching, and it quenches the thirst better. And number 3, it is healthier. And subhanAllah, there's so much that we have been taught by Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that has hikmah in it, but it also has the benefits. It has the health benefits. There are particular people who even say that if you gulp and if you drink so much, it's not good for like the liver and other things like that. So we can see that there is hikmah in the teachings of the sunnah, and these are things that we should follow. Okay, if one passes away and has no heirs, no known heirs, those who inherit from them, then what to do with their wealth? Now, number 1, if a person passes away and they have no known relatives, the first thing is that an effort should be made to locate any of the potential heirs. And if that's done, and if there are no heirs, then the wealth, from an Islamic government standpoint, the wealth would belong to the Baytul Mal. But in the absence of that, which we don't have right now, then it will be distributed amongst the poor and the needy in full. That's what the response is for that. Okay, the next question is, I've heard the hadith that purity is half of Iman. What does this mean? What purity is it referring to? Is it purity from the outside, physical purity, or is it spiritual purity, purity of the soul? So yes, this is part of a longer hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, "At-tahuru shatrul iman," that purity is half of faith. And the hadith goes on and it says quite a few other things, but we'll particularly speak about and talk about this portion, at-tahuru shatrul iman. Purity is half of faith, or purity is half of iman. So what do the scholars say about this hadith, and what do they explain about it? So one thing they say that could be a meaning of this hadith is that iman, which is Islam, of course, believing in having Iman. Iman is such that it erases both major and minor sins. If someone has Iman and if they make tawbah to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would forgive those types of sins. Tahara only, when it's tahara, for example, if one makes wudu and so on, we know that these types of things, they erase the minor sins. So in this particular sense, tahara is half of faith because it erases the minor sins, which people commit plenty of, as we know. So that is one particular explanation. Another explanation that scholars give here at Tahuru Shatrul Iman, they say that cleanliness is half of Iman. They take Iman in the meaning of Salah. Why do they do that? Because Tahara is the most important condition for the validity of Salah. We know that wudu is the key to Salah. Without wudu and without Tahara, the Salah itself would not be accepted. And we pray Salah 5 times a day, as we know. Tahara itself is external purity, which is purity of the body, while Salah itself is, of course, a means of internal purity as well, as we know. Thirdly, as we said, purity is of 2 types. Number 1, internal purity. Secondly, external purity. Iman is that which is internal purity, which is purity of the heart. And Tahara is external purity, which is purity of the body. So this is why they say that at-tahuru shatrul iman, it's half of faith, while Iman itself is the other half, which is purity of the internal aspect. So those are just some particular explanations for that hadith. It doesn't mean in the sense that at-tahuru shatrul iman, and then another hadith mentions that marriage is also half of faith. So if you're clean and if you get married, your deen is complete. No, it doesn't mean that. It just means that there are great benefits to these things, which cause so much reward, and follow-up things after that, which shows the importance and the necessity of, or the importance of these things and what they lead to. Okay, the last question is, can I make any dua in sajda, like dua for myself? And does the dua have to be in Arabic, or can dua be in any language? Now, if the sajda is done inside of a salah, someone is praying a nafil salah or whatever it may be, then in that case, dua cannot be done in any other language except the Arabic language. And particularly the du'as would be from the Quran and from those ma'thur, the du'as that are taught by Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, not du'as that resemble the speech of the people. That is within the salah. If dua is done in another language or the speech of the people within the salah, then the salah would be broken and it would have to be repeated. Now, when it comes to sajda, which is done outside of salah, in that case, like sajda to the shukr or anything like that, then it will be permissible to make dua even in one's own language. One can do that because it is considered outside of salah and there's no condition for doing that. So it's permissible. That's a mubah action, a permissible action for one to perform. So we will inshallah end there today. Once again, this weekend or this Saturday, we will not have our Easy Good Deeds program because we have our monthly Fortifying Faith series program with Sheikh Hamza, inshallah, and a guest. So inshallah, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, we will continue with that particular program. But once again, if you have any questions, then for next Wednesday, please inshallah send me an email, mufti@islamstl.org, and we will inshallah do our best to try and answer your question. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.